Attorney Vicky Ballesteros, and I will be your moderator for today. Let me briefly discuss the guidelines for today's webinar. All participants will please put yourselves on mute for the entire duration of our session today. And if you have questions, please type them into the chat box. There's an icon at the bottom, and these will be noted. I will be tallying all of your questions, and we will discuss them during our question and answer session. As the moderator, I will be the one to ask the questions for you. And as we have seen the video being looped and played earlier, let me introduce the CFBCI. It was founded in January 1998 and in 2018 celebrated its 20th anniversary. It is one of the most prominent nonprofit organizations in the Filipino-Chinese community, with memberships of more than 400 individuals and growing. These members come from the finance, manufacturing, real estate development, travel and tourism, fuel, chemical, hardware, construction, banking, and other important business sectors in the country, who are the creme de la creme of the Sino-Philippine community. Okay, so to kickstart our program today, let us hear the opening remarks from the CFBCI President, Mr. Alejandro Co.
Distinguished resource speaker Attorney J. Masangkay, along with our moderator for this webinar, Attorney Vicky Ballesteros, fellow CFBCI officers and members participants of today's webinar, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar on legal and tax updates. Today's topic is essential to businessmen, particularly the MSME. The past few months has been critical to the most business due to the crisis caused by the pandemic, some of which resulted through temporary or permanent closure of business. It is a good thing that the government has passed the Bayanihan Law, which provided us with some relief in terms of paying our rental, loan, extension of paying our taxes. Recently, the Bureau of Internal Revenue launched a program allowing taxpayers to voluntarily settle their tax arrears to reduce the agency audit investigation amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. We look forward that our resource speakers would give us the bird's eye view on the voluntary assessment and payment program, BAPP, or Revenue Regulation on 18-2020. Legal remedy will also be discussed by Attorney Masangkay to further enlighten us and help our business cope up in this trying time. We do believe that this topic will be of great help and very timely, especially when our resilience is on the line. Thank you, and may we have all a pleasant day ahead.
Thank you, sir, for those words of welcome to our participants today. We shall now call on our Vice Chairman and CFBCI Trade and Commerce Committee Chair, Mr. Richard Yao, to introduce our guest speaker for today.
Thank you, President Alejandro Co and Attorney Vicky. Good afternoon to our webinar participants. As we all know, the business sectors are reeling and still being impacted by this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And most recently in the news, it is quite alarming to hear that our local banks' loans are highest in 6 years. To help us navigate and seek remedies to the tax and legal issues we are facing and will be encountering resulting from this crisis, we have invited a resource speaker, Attorney Jay Masangkay, who is currently the managing partner of Masangkay, Renegado, and Partners Law Office. He specializes in fields of taxation and corporate law, corporate acquisitions, restructuring, and cross-border transactions. He handles all types of tax-related cases, such as tax assessment, refunds, tax evasions, and criminal cases before the RDO, BIR Regional Office, Court of Tax Appeals, and the Supreme Court. He likewise assists in securing confirmatory ruling in the BIR Legal Division and the BIR International Tax Affairs Division. Attorney Masangkay serves as the legal counsel and director of different software development and fintech IT companies. During this pandemic, he developed notariopublico.ph, an online platform that helps remotely connect notary publics in the Philippines with clients for their legal services. Our resource speaker is a member of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, Tax Management Association of the Philippines, and the Inter-Pacific Bar Association. He earned his Bachelor of Laws degree from San Beda University, Manila in 2010 and was admitted to the Philippine Bar in 2011. With these credentials, CFBCI is truly honored in presenting to you tax and legal consultant, Attorney Jay Masangkay. Attorney, the mic is now yours.
Thank you very much, Sir Richard. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And thank you so much also to the Chinese-Filipino Business Club for the opportunity. This is already my second time to be part of the lecture series. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be part of your lecture series. So this afternoon, sir, we'll be discussing very interesting topics, no? Topics that are very relevant to the business community and also to the ordinary citizens that were affected adversely by the COVID-19 pandemic. So, so we'll start our discussion with the different BR issuances, no, of the government, and then we'll kickstart also the discussion on the concessions on rentals. Okay, then on the discussion also as requested, discussions on the VAPP or the Voluntary Assessment and Payment Program of the BIR that extended tax amnesty on delinquencies. And we'll finish the discussion on the remedy of corporate rehabilitation in cases when despite all the reliefs and despite all the efforts of a taxpayer or a businessman, you still foresee the impossibility of paying all your obligations. So let me share my slides. I hope everyone can see it already. So I titled this lecture as a tax and legal lifelines. No? These are the lifelines that we may use in the process of doing business. A discussion on salient legal rights and remedies in times of challenging economy. So, as mentioned, let me kickstart by discussing the different BIR issuances affecting the taxpayers' rights and remedies. So I'll discuss the extension to file protest and other submissions in the BIR, extensions on the statute of limitations, or the right of the government to collect, the tax amnesty application on tax delinquencies, the voluntary assessment and payment program. Okay, so before I discuss all those issues and updates, let me just give you an overview of what are the processes of assessment, just for us to have an idea on how the BIR assess and what are the deadlines that we should be following. Okay, so usually An assessment starts with a letter of authority or letter notice. These are the letters authorizing a particular revenue officer to conduct an audit in your company or business. So there are two potential scenarios. Either there is non-submission of documents or submission of documents. In case you fail to submit documents, the BIR will issue notices. And if you fail to submit despite the notices, they will give you a final notice and with a warning that if you fail to submit documents, they will issue subpoena ducis tecum. So subpoena ducis tecum is a writ or a document that compels a taxpayer to submit the documents in the BIR. And this time, if you fail to comply with subpoena ducis tecum, it will authorize the BIR to file the appropriate criminal cases in the prosecutor office, and then later on in the court, if not, if there is a probable cause. So we try to avoid this route or option. So what if you submit the documents in the BIR? So when you submit documents, they will evaluate that document. Then if they found out that there are some tax deficiency, they will issue what we call as notice of informal conference. Now, once a notice of informal conference is issued, you are being invited in the BIR office to discuss the potential exposures listed at the back of the notice of informal conference. So you have a period of 15 days within which to file a position paper on the notice of informal conference. And if still the BIR says that you have some deficiency taxes, they will issue what we call as the PAN or preliminary assessment notice, where you can file a protest within 15 days from receipt. Okay. Now, assuming that the BIR is still not convinced with your position paper, they will issue what we call as the formal letter of demand or the final assessment notice. This time, you have 30 days within which to file your protest to the FAN. Okay. Now, if there are still tax deficiency, they will issue the final decision on disputed assessment within a certain period. Now, you have to take note of these deadlines. You are not required to file position papers in the notice of informal conference or preliminary assessment notice. But take note that with respect to the 30-day period to file a protest to the FAN, it is mandatory. And the failure to file the protest within the 30-day period will make the assessment final and executory. So kahit po kayo ay may basis doon sa inyong protest, kung kayo po ay hindi nakapag-file ng protest within the 30-day period, that will make the assessment final and executory. Now, assuming there is an FDDA or final decision on disputed assessment, you still have a lot of remedies. You can go to the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, or you can go directly to the CTA. In the BIR Commissioner, you can file a request for reconsideration within 30-day period. And with the CTA, you can file a petition for review within 30-day period. Now, from the Commissioner, assuming the Commissioner decided against your favor, you can still go up to the CTA within 30-day period also. Now, some taxpayers would choose the BIR Commissioner route kasi po walang filing fee doon. Wala po tayong binabayad na filing fee. And but some would want to go directly to the CTA. Yun nga lang po, there are filing fees involved, no? And the filing fee is based on the tax amount due. So medyo mabigat po yung bayad. Then from the CTA and division, you can go up to the CTA and bank, and you can go up to the Supreme Court. So yun po yung proseso ng assessment. That's the process from the investigation up to the assessment, up to the remedies to the courts. No? Now, assuming Take note, take note that these remedies, okay, the periods provided under these remedies are mandatory, meaning unlike the position paper on informal conference, ito pong request for consideration and petition for review, these are mandatory filing, meaning if you fail to file within these periods, okay, the assessment becomes final and executory, and then that will allow already the BIR to proceed to collection. So assuming that the assessment becomes final and executory, what would be the next steps? Usually yan, they will endorse your case in the collection division of the BIR. Then they will send you notices, delinquency notice, then if there's no response, preliminary collection notice, then if you still did not pay the amount of tax due, they will issue the final notice before seizure with a warning that if you will not pay the delinquent amount of taxes, they will issue a warrant of distraint or levy. So what are these warrant of distraint or levy? These are the documents that will authorize the BR officers to levy uh, your properties, no? Like they can go to the register of deeds and attach your land or building, okay? Then they can also go to your banks to garnish the accounts. So from this, you can either go to the Court of Tax Appeals by way of a petition for review. Then you can question the validity of the warrant of distraint or levy. And you can apply for a TRO in order that that warrant of distraint or garnishment will not be implemented. Then, however, if you choose that you will no more contest the assessment, you can opt for a legal compromise based on the doubtful validity of assessment or the financial incapacity. If you choose doubtful validity of assessment, you can pay 40% of the basic tax. So hindi po kasama dito yung interest, penalty, surcharge in the computation. So 40% of the basic tax. If your ground is the financial incapacity, it's 10% of the basic tax. Now, this will be reviewed by the Regional Evaluation Board if the amount is 500,000 or less. And if it is more than that amount, it will be reviewed by the National Evaluation Board. So ito po yung proseso ng and remedies when the BIR tries to collect from you based on a final and executory assessment. So now, based on these remedies and procedures, the BIR issued an extension for a period to file those documents, like the position paper to the informal conference, position paper to the fund, okay, the protest, appeal and reconsideration to the commissioner, in other similar letters and correspondences. So because of COVID-19 pandemic and the inability of people to go out of their houses and travel restrictions, so there was an extension. So marami pong extensions na binigay, no, na several times. Okay. So on the first issuance of the BIR, they said that the filing dues, if the filing dates fall due during the emergency period starting March 16, 2020, there shall be an extended deadline until 30 days from the lifting of the period of emergency. Okay? Take note that at that time, they are using the word emergency. Wala pa pong sinasabi ng ECQ, GCQ, MECQ, wala pa po. Because this was the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. No? So sabi nila, 30 days from the lifting of emergency. Then, we were asking na ano ba yung meaning ng emergency at that time, but because there is also a declaration by the President of a state of emergency, a state of national calamity. Now, they issued a subsequent regulation, and it seems and that on this regulation, they are referring to the lifting of the state of emergency, but there is a ECQ. So, ibig sabihin, they are referring to the ECQ. So, 30 days from the state of emergency, which is ECQ. Now, they issued subsequently a regulation dated April 29, 2020. They said, the BIR said that if the filing due dates fall during the following period, period starting on March 16, 2020, and period of 30 days from lifting of the ECQ, meaning if the last day to file falls within this period, the extended deadline will be 30 days from the lifting of the quarantine. So, meron pong pagbabago doon sa operative word na ginamit. Noong una ay emergency, ngayon po ay lifting of the quarantine. Now, if you read the regulation at the bottom on what means quarantine, they said that it shall be any announcement by the government resulting to the limited operations and mobility, including but not limited to the following. So meron ditong community quarantine, merong ECQ, modified community quarantine, then the GCQ or general community quarantine. Then subsequently, I think at that time wala pa pong modified enhanced community quarantine. Subsequently, they again issued a regulation defining quarantine. Ang problema lang, nawala yung GCQ sa definition and modified community quarantine o MCQ. But I think based on the definition, statutory construction, you can infer that the GCQ and MCQ should be included because it also results from the limited operation and mobility of persons. Okay. So yun po yung mga extensions with respect to the filing of position papers, on notice of informal conference, yung protest to the FAN or FAN. Why is it very important that we know the deadlines on this paper? Because as mentioned earlier, if you fail to file these protests within the period prescribed by the rules, the assessment becomes final and executory, and the BIR can now proceed to collect the taxes and issue warrants, garnishments, Kahit na meron ka pang basis, kahit pa maganda pa yung maganda pa yung mga records mo, meron kang legal basis, meron kang documents, you have complete returns and financial statements to support your argument, but you fail to file the protest within the period, it has been held several times by the Supreme Court and the Court of Tax Appeals that if you fail to file within that period, the assessment becomes final and executory. That's why it's very important po na malaman po natin yung mga deadlines and yung extensions, And I think a lot of taxpayers during the ECQ, MECQ have difficulty in filing those protests because they are not in the offices, and also their accountants and lawyers are not also in their offices. So, but we have to take note of that operative word. Okay. So take note that it shall be from the lifting of the quarantine. So basically, if you interpret the regulation of the BIR, until and unless the quarantine has been lifted, you can still file your position papers and protests. Now let's come to the suspension on the statute of limitations. These are the right of the government to collect from the taxpayer. As a general rule, the government has 3 years only to assess a taxpayer, no, uh, and they can collect taxes within 5 years from a valid assessment. So that's the general rule. So they don't have a unlimited authority, no, to collect and assess. By way of exception, if there is a false or fraudulent return or failure to file a return, they can assess within the 10-year period from the discovery. Okay. Or if the taxpayer and the commissioner or the BIR officer agreed in writing for an extension, or if the commissioner is prohibited from making assessment or enforce collection. So these are the grounds for an extension in the statute of limitations. Now, on the basis of the third exception, the BIR issued a controversial regulation dated March 27 also. So this was the one of the first issuances of the BIR. It says here that with the proclamation of the president and the WHO and the pandemic, uh, it has effectively prohibited the commissioner or his authorized representative from making the servicing of assessment notices, warrant of distraint and or levy, as well as warrants of garnishment for the enforcement and collection of deficiency taxes. So there was an admission that they are being, there was an effect prohibited from serving those warrants, no, and garnishments. And according to the regulation, the suspension shall start from March 16, 2020 until the lifting of the state of national emergency and for 60 days thereafter. So meron na namang operative word na ginamit. Ang ginamit is not ECQ, MECQ, but the lifting of the national emergency. So magkaiba po 'yon, no? And they said that the suspension shall apply with respect to the issuance and service of assessment notices, warrants, and enforcement or collection of deficiency taxes. Now, they changed that wording. Maybe they thought na mas mahaba yung national emergency, no? So they again issued an amendment, but after about 4 months, no, from March, July na, there was a clarification, and it says that the lifting shall be from the extreme community quarantine, no. So nung nabasa ko ito, so iba na naman, extreme community quarantine. But maybe it was just typo error, because subsequently they said that this is really enhanced community quarantine. So take note that on the servicing of warrants, garnishments, no, it is suspended from March 16, 2020 until the lifting of the ECQ and for 60 days thereafter. That's why I think during the ECQ period and the even after the lifting, a lot of taxpayer has been asking na ang BIR po ba ay allowed po ba sila na mag-serve ng mga notices, ng mga warrants, ng mga garnishments during this period. And I think there was some confusion, because take note that on March 27, 2020, the operative word they used was from the lifting of national emergency, no? Now it took them about 4 months to clarify that it was really enhanced community quarantine. Now the question is, what happens in the middle, no? From March 27, 2020 and before the July 15, 2020, no? What if doon sa gitna sinerve yung warrant, no? And our position is that the regulation that should apply should be the first one, not not the subsequent regulation. Now, in relation to the taxpayers' rights and remedies, the BIR also extended the tax amnesty application on tax delinquencies. Okay, remember that the BIR issued the revenue regulation implementing the law that grants tax amnesty on tax delinquencies. Okay. So, originally, ito po ay deadline ng April 23, 2020. But because of the ECQ and the proclamation of national emergency, it was extended several times. Until recently, they said that, okay, to give the taxpayers opportunity to apply under this program, will extend it until December 31, 2020. So, meron pa po tayong tsansa, no, na mag-apply po nitong tax amnesty on delinquencies. We have until December 31, 2020 para po mag-apply. So what are these tax amnesty, no? This applies to delinquent accounts covering the taxable year 2017 and prior years. Okay? Take note, it only applies to taxable year 2017 and prior years. Then, it applies only to final and executory tax assessments. Meaning, these are the tax assessments where you failed to file a protest to the fund. Remember, mandatory po yun, no? Mandatory po siya. So if you fail to file your protest to the fund or FAN, it becomes final and executory. You can apply under this tax amnesty. Then you fail also to file a petition to the CTA. So assuming na there is a final decision on disputed assessment issued, you failed to file with the CTA a petition for review, or you failed to file also a request for consideration with the BIR commissioner. So these are some of the delinquent accounts that covered. Okay. So what are the tax rates on that you may avail of? Okay. So for delinquent accounts and which are final and executory, you have 40% of the basic tax. Okay? So para po itong legal compromise, no? Remember kanina I enumerated one of the remedies. You can apply for a legal compromise, no? 40% of the basic tax. Okay? Except that this will not go through the procedure in the regional evaluation board and the national evaluation board. Okay, so you can apply under this program. It with respect naman for tax cases subject of final and executory judgment by the courts, it's 50% of the basic tax. With those with pending criminal cases in the DOJ or the prosecutor's office, no, for tax evasion, 60% of the basic tax. For withholding agents who withheld but did not remit the taxes, you are given 100% of the basic tax. Okay. Remember that the basis for the tax hindi po kasama yung penalties, interest, no. It's only the basic tax. Okay. Now, this one is the most recent, no, and I think everybody is very eager to learn about this new program by the BIR. It was issued very recently, the Voluntary Assessment and Payment Program. It's still under publication, meaning under the rules, you have the effectivity of regulation shall be 15 days from issuance. So based on the data, that we got, it will take effect September 20. But September 20 is a Sunday. So September 21 po, Monday. Okay. So this is the latest relief that is being offered by the government. The voluntary assessment and payment program. Okay. So what is this program? It is a program implemented for the collection of additional revenue otherwise collected through audit and enforcement effort. And the idea is to limit the contact with the taxpayer and to maximize revenue with the least admin cost to the BIR. Okay. And also, the aim is to grant privileges to the taxpayer by not being audited for the particular taxable year and for the particular tax covered by the VAPP application. What are covered by this VAPP? First, it covers all internal revenue taxes. Okay? So lahat po, all internal revenue taxes. So income tax, VAT, percentage tax, okay, excise tax, kung meron kayong mga DST, no, documentary stamp tax, these are also covered, okay? Pero there is a period, no? It only covers the taxable year ending December 2018, okay? Or the fiscal year ending from July 2018 to June 2019. So, if your taxable year ends within these two qualification, you are entitled, no? So, income tax, VAT, percentage tax, excise tax, no, DST, these are all covered. Covered also are the one-time transaction or on-net transaction, like donors tax, capital gains tax, estate tax, creditable withholding tax, expanded withholding tax, and DST. Okay, like for example, on donation of property, okay, transfer of shares of a company, transfer of real properties, land or building. These are all covered by the VAPP program. Who can avail? Okay. Number one, those who erroneously paid the taxes and those who failed to file the tax return. And if you read the BR regulations, they don't qualify whether the erroneous payment or failure to file was inadvertence or otherwise. So kahit na there was intentional failure to pay the taxes and failure to file the return. So they don't qualify whether it's fraudulent or not. No? So it is an opportunity to correct, okay, to correct your payment of taxes and also help the government recover and have some revenue. Under this program, who are not qualified? Number one, those who have been issued with a FAN, no, final assessment notice that became final and executory on or before the effectivity of the regulation. Again, those who have been issued with a FAN, final assessment notice. Remember our discussion earlier on how do they issue the FAN, no? But under the regulation, not all taxpayer who receive FAN are disqualified. Ang sinabi nila doon is those who were issued the FAN that became final and executory, meaning you did not file a protest on your FAN. Okay. Second, those under investigation as a result of a verified information from a tax informant. Third, those with tax fraud cases filed and pending with the DOJ. And lastly, those with pending cases involving evasion and other criminal offenses under the tax code. Okay. So these are the taxpayers who cannot avail of the VAPP program. Now, how much will be the payment, okay? The reduced payment, okay? So the reduced payment depends on your increase or decrease of the total tax due from 2017 to 2018. So you'll have to compute how many taxes have you paid in 2017 and how many taxes you paid in 2018. Then depends on the increase or decrease will be your amount payable to the BIR. So if the net increase of if there's a net increase of not more than 10% in total taxes due from 2017 to 2018, the amount to be paid shall be 3% of the gross sales, or 7% of the 2018 net taxable sale, whichever is higher. Okay. So if you look at the schedule, um, the net increase depends on the total taxes due. And under the guidelines, they define the total tax due as all the internal revenue taxes that you have paid. So kasama dito yung income tax, VAT, okay, na binayad nyo, during the tax, percentage tax also. So all internal revenue taxes that you have paid during the taxable year, that will be the basis of the computation on the increase on 2017 and 2018. Okay. On the amount of payment, sabi nila 3% of the 2018 gross sales or 7% of the 2018 net taxable sales. And the BIR regulation on VAPP defined the gross sales and net taxable sales as based on the annual income tax return. So magkaiba po yung definition nila. For purposes of determining the increase or decrease in total tax due, it should be all the internal revenue taxes that you have paid. No? But with respect to the amount due, the basis shall be the gross sales or the net taxable sales per your annual income tax return of in taxable year 2018. Okay. So if there's a net increase of more than 10% up to 30% in total taxes, uh, the percentage shall be 2% of the 2018 gross sales or 6% of the 2018 net taxable sales, whichever is higher. If there's an increase of not more than 30% in total tax due from 2017 to 2018, that amounts to be paid shall be 1% of the 2018 gross sales or 5% of the net taxable income. If there is a decrease, okay, instead of an increase, there's a decrease in the payment by not more than 10%, the amount due will be 4% of the total gross sales or 8% of the 2018 net taxable sales. Okay. If there's a decrease of not more than 10% in total tax due from 2017 to 2018, it shall be the amount to be paid shall be 5% of the 2018 gross sales or the 9% of the 2018 net taxable sales. So if you can notice, if there is more increase, you pay lesser. If there's a decrease, you pay more. Okay. So it somehow incentivizes the taxpayer who paid more during those period. Now, the BIR qualified that irrespective of those percentages, the taxpayer's minimum amount to be paid shall depend on the type of taxpayer. So a while ago, I presented the percentages of amount to be paid. The BIR said that at any rate, irrespective of the percentage, there should be a minimum amount to be paid. So hindi pwedeng sobrang baba yung amount na babayaran. There is a cap, a minimum amount to be paid. For corporations, if the subscribed capital stock is more than 50 million, you have a minimum amount payable of 1 million peso. And if the subscribed capital is more than 20 million to 50 million, it's 500,000. If more than 5 million to 20 million, it's 250,000. And if it is 5 million or less, the amount to be paid is 100,000. The minimum amount to be paid is 500,000. Okay. How about the other taxpayers like individuals, estates, and trusts? The minimum amount to be paid is way lesser, 75,000 pesos. And for other juridical entities like cooperatives, foundations, and GPPs or general professional partnerships, only 75,000 pesos. Okay. How about the on-net transactions? Meaning ito yung mga one-time transactions like donation, transfer of shares, transfer of properties. Okay. The amount to be paid shall be 5% of the tax amount remitted. Okay. Okay. For final and creditable withholding taxes, 5% of the tax remitted. And for on-net transactions like donor's tax, CGT, or DST, you'll pay the basic tax due plus the 5% of the basic tax due. Okay. So what are the requirements for the voluntary assessment and payment program? They have a form where you have to fill in. Then as a requirement for the application, you have to pay first. Hindi pwede na evaluate muna ng BIR before kayo magbayad. No? They said that when you file the application, it should include the payment form and proof of payment of the minimum amount of taxes. Then you have to show also the proof of your 2017 and 2018 taxes to show that you have a decrease or increase in the taxes due. Then the payment should be in cash. Bawal po yung tax debit memo, tax credit certificates, o offset mo lang sa tax due. So bawal po. The idea is the government need revenue. So payment should be in cash. Okay? So in general, the process will be the filing of application and proof of payment, okay, together with the supporting documents. Then the BAR will evaluate the document. Okay. On what level of the BAR? On the BAR Revenue District Office, or if you are in the large tax office, the large tax office, okay, yung evaluation. Then if you are granted or approved, they will issue a certificate of availment. Okay. If they see that you are not qualified, then they will issue a certificate of denial. Okay. So if you apply for VAPP, what are the privileges of a taxpayer? Why would I avail of this program? Okay. Why not let the BIR assess me, okay, for the taxes? Then let's just file the protest and position paper. So these are the privileges. No? First, the taxpayer shall not be audited for 2018 for the tax types covered by the VAPP avail. So they will not issue anymore the LOA, PAN, FAN, or any assessment notices because you already applied for VAPP program. Okay, that's the number one privilege. Okay. Number two, if currently being audited, the audit shall be suspended pending the VAPP application. Okay. So for instance, you were issued an LOA or meron ka ng PAN, okay? Preliminary Assessment Notice. There's already a preliminary computation of taxes. Once you have applied for VAPP program, the audit will be suspended. So suspended muna pending the approval or denial of the application. Okay? If the VAPP application is approved, okay, assuming merong inisyu na LOA, tax verification notice or TVN, NIC, PAN or FAN, this will be withdrawn and shall be cancelled. So those are the privileges, okay, granted by the BIR for helping the government raise revenue, okay, through the voluntary assessment and payment program. So take note that the taxpayer shall not be audited, but only for 2018, okay, and for the tax type covered by the VAPP availed of. It shall not apply to any tax types, no, that were not applied, and it shall not apply to other taxable years. Okay, but what's the caveat, no? What's the catch in the VAPP that we should also consider? Um, Number one is that the application for VAPP is not automatically granted, will not be automatically granted. There's no assurance, of course, that it will be granted by the BIR. So, um, assuming that you have an LOA or an ongoing investigation and you applied, so according to the rules, the audit shall be suspended. Okay, but what if the application was denied by the BIR? Under the rules also, the audit investigation shall resume. Okay, but you will ask, what about my payment? Remember, you already paid. When you apply, you already paid the amounts. Okay, you already paid the percentages, the minimum amount to for the voluntary assessment program. What about the payment? Okay, according to the BIR, the voluntary payment shall be applied to deficiency taxes which may be found after audit. So parang advance payment. It's your advance payment. Assuming the VAPP application was denied, okay, and you were subjected to investigation, an audit, and for example, uh, you paid 1 million peso. You're you're a company with more than 50 million subscribed capital stock, so you paid 1 million peso. But you paid 1 million peso as part of the VAPP program application. But after audit, after the application, it was denied, no, and then the investigation resumes. Later on, they found out that you have a deficiency of about 30 million peso or 10 million peso. According to the BIR, the voluntary payment shall be considered as an advance payment, no, for the tax deficiency. Okay. What if, for example, uh, you were already given, so approved na yung iyong application for VAPP. It was approved by the BIR. They said that you are entitled to it. So the action is you were given a certificate of availment. Okay. Would that be an assurance that you will not be audited or there will be no audit? The answer is no also. Because if you look at the guidelines, there at the bottom part, at the end of the guideline, it says that a certificate of availment may be invalidated. Okay, if they found out that there is understatement of sales or receipts or overstatement of deductions by more than 30%. Okay, and or if the taxpayer withheld taxes but failed to remit withholding taxes. Okay, so these are the some of the conditions, no. And if you ask me, um, whether there is an assurance for the VAPP uh, application, there is no assurance, but uh, it may help you also if you are really qualified and there was no misrepresentation whatsoever. Then you may avail it, and once approved, you will not be subjected anymore to the long process, no, the long process of assessment and collection. Okay, so
Okay.
those.
Yeah. May I interject? So, at this point, we would like to, because of all the BIR updates, and thank you to Attorney J for providing so much clarity on this, especially on the VAPP. Um, I also understand that we're waiting for the implementing rules for more guidance on this. But at this point, we would like to take a short break to address the questions that have been raised so far. But before I proceed with the questions, we will have a short picture taking, and I would like to turn over this to Miss Judith. Uh, to go forward with the this picture taking. Maybe we can, Attorney J, if you could unshare, and we can see the participants that we have so far.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can everyone open the video, please, for picture taking? I have 6 pages today. Are you ready? Can everyone open, please? Okay. Okay, for page 1, Sir Gerald. Are you ready? 1, 2, smile. Go to second page. Can you everybody please open? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Next, please. Okay. Okay na po. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have some questions here. If the assessment, and this is, directed to Attorney J, if the assessment is in the name of the company president who has since passed away, so the company president is named in the tax case, what happens to the case filed if the president passes away? I mean, maybe you could, give clarity. So maybe we need more facts. If is it in his capacity as a president, or in his personal capacity? Maybe you could address it.
Also, maybe we can ask question on what type of tax case would this be. If this is only usually, because usually in the assessment, it is addressed to a president, no, as a template, no, be president being the one in charge of the operation of the company. But if this is a a simple collection case, then the assessment will still proceed, no, the assessment will still proceed against the company. Okay. But if the tax case is against the president, and this involves a criminal liability, like one of the example would be the failure to comply with subpoena ducis tecum, no, it's a very personal offense. So when if the president dies, being the person charged of the offense, it extinguishes already that particular case because of the death. No? So it depends, no, if that is a criminal case or if that is a simple civil case or tax case for collection.
Okay, and then there's another question. So, as the government is in the forefront of asking donations from private enterprises and individuals in the light of the pandemic, can an individual or corporate taxpayer delay or make a partial payment of their taxes?
Actually, there was no ano on that one. There's no specific regulation on the late filing or the partial payment of taxes. The relief granted were these VAPP and the tax amnesty on delinquencies, and only those extensions to file the return and the payment of taxes. But if there's no specific mandate or guidelines that allows for a deferred tax payment.
Yes, I agree. So we don't have that kind of installment basis kind of thing. But if there are donations made to NGOs or accredited donor institutions, we can claim that as deductions, as regular expenses. We just need the donation certificate acknowledging that the donation was made to an accredited donor institution that is registered, should be registered with the PCNC. So that's the Philippine Council for NGO certification. So you make sure that your donations go to an accredited institution, and then you can claim that as an expense, but there is no uh, delay or partial payment. And then there's another question: can the BIR file a case versus or against directors? I guess this is board members, directors who are not actively involved in the management of the business or in business operations.
Um, it should be if they are not engaged in any operation of the company and they did not even sign the financial statements. Usually the BIR will file against the persons who sign the financial statements, as part of the corporate responsibility. But if you're not really actively engaged in the operation of the company, it should not should be no legal basis for the filing of the complaint. However, I noticed the BIR recently that if the company is not responding to their letters, what they do is they will get the GIS in the SEC, get your records in the SEC, and then they will check the names of the directors there. Tapos, you have addresses in the GIS. So they will send it in your residential address. So it happened to several of the taxpayers. But as to that is uh, there's a legal basis for that. I mean, to include you as part of the defendant or respondent, that should not be allowed.
So yeah, because that will pierce the corporate entity, right? And then on confidential information, what is the monetary benefit of providing information to becoming a third-party informant, and how do you monitor the progress of that case?
This is the the tax informant.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, you 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 will be given a percentage of whatever amount will be actually collected. Should not be it should not uh, just be giving information. That amount should be actually collected. Hindi po pwede na you just inform the BIR and
yeah,
then
yeah.
based on the assessment, you will get that amount. So
So yeah,
it should be
that's
upfront.
it's really 10%. It's called the
Yep.
confidential informers reward. But in so many times we see in the practice we see that people are following up on their reward, but the BIR will not pay it out unless it's actually collected. So, of course, the company will be assessed on fraud because there's an informant, but that it will go through the legal division and the litigation division, and if the company protests, it will go up to the CTA, and until there's the final judgment, the informant will not get the actual money. Okay, so the final one is, what will be the BIR's basis to deny a VAPP application?
One of the basis will be you did not submit, okay, the required documents. Remember, there are list of documents that you have to submit together with the application. Like, you have to prove that there was a tax payment and the increase or decrease in tax payments, okay. And number two, if you are a if that includes an FAN, okay, if you were issued an FAN before the effectivity of the regulation, meaning before September 21, you were issued a FAN and you failed to protest that FAN. So it became final and executory. So because of that, you will not be able to avail of the VAPP program.
Okay, so this is just an interlude. So we have a very interesting topic. This is just actually the half point. So we will go forward and move into the yes. So on the question there, the VAPP is limited only to taxable year 2018, and then fiscal year you mentioned, Attorney J, right? So that's only the, because this is the coverage mentioned in the regulations. Okay, so maybe we could go forward with the corporate, matters like rental payments, insolvency, and corporate rehabilitation. That's our second part. So please bear with us because these are interesting topics. Over to you, Attorney J.
Right. So now let's go to the discussion on concessions on commercial rents of MSMEs and residential rents. Okay. Um, there has been a lot of questions on what will happen to the rental payments, so especially that during that especially during ECQ, there are some industries that are not allowed to operate. And even after the lifting of ECQ during the MECQ, there are some industries that are not allowed. Okay, there are partial industries that are allowed to operate, but there are some who are not allowed to operate. The question is, what are the concessions given by the government on this rental payment? Okay, now, the DTI issued regulations in implementation of Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. And under that regulation, concessions on commercial rents and residential rents shall be number one, 30 days grace period on rents falling due during the period of ECQ, MECQ, and GCQ. Okay, so it's a 30-day grace period for the payment of rent. Okay. Second will be the cumulative amount of the rent falling due within this period shall be amortized for 6 months from the lifting of the ECQ, MECQ, or GCQ. So there are two concessions given. Number one is the 30-day grace period. So you'll be paying late rent without penalties. Okay. Second will be your right to those rent uh, that were due during the ECQ. Okay, you can amortize over a period of 6 months. So pwedeng installment, no, installment for 6 months. But what is the meaning of MSMEs? No, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So not everyone is uh, allowed, no, to claim for this benefit. Only those MSMEs are allowed, or those whose total assets, inclusive of those arising from loan, but exclusive of the land where the business entity's office, plant, or equipment is located have the following value. Okay. For micro, uh, the total asset is not more than 3 million peso. For small, 3 million to 15 million peso. Medium, 15 million peso. Okay. So if you are outside this definition, you are not entitled to the concessions given by the government. Okay. Uh, Another question being raised before is that uh, was there not a statement in DTI regulation that the lessor can also waive, no, the penalties, because there are mention of the lessor being encouraged to to uh, totally or partially waive the rental dues. Okay. And but and if you read the regulation of the DTI, it's not really mandatory. No, it's only discretionary on the part of the lessor. The rules provide that the lessors are just being encouraged to extend extend the either a waiver of total or portion of the rental. But if you read the regulation, there is no mandatory uh, mandate. No, there is no uh, compelling mandate, okay, a requirement that they should waive the rental fees. The regulation just state that you are being encouraged, okay, to extend such benefit. Okay. So for you to be eligible for that concessions, the requirements will be number one, uh, the MSMEs should have temporarily ceased operations within the ECQ period. So not all MSMEs are qualified for the concession. Only those who have ceased operations temporarily during the ECQ period. Okay. Second, the MSME should signify the request to the lessor and provide supporting documents. No, it's not automatic. You have to ask from the lessor. Okay, and you have to prove that you are micro, small, or medium enterprise by providing, say, for example, financial statements or maybe your articles of incorporation, okay, stating your capital. And number three, if you are asking for a 6-month amortization uh, of the cumulative amount of rent, you have to provide a signed promissory note or letter of undertaking for the deferred payment of rent. So there's no requirement under the rules for you to issue a post-dated check. So the minimum requirement is that there should be a signed promissory note or a letter of undertaking. Okay. So these are the eligibility for an MSME. What are the other legal consequences? Okay, because of the guidelines. Number one, the lessee, okay, or the lessor cannot enforce eviction for failure to pay rent during the 30-day period of extension. So, hindi ka pwedeng mag-file ng ejectment suit, okay, in order to remove the lessee because of non-payment of rent during the extension period. Okay. But it also means that if the payment of rent is already outside the mandatory 30-day period, that would be a basis for eviction. Okay? The rules only provide for concession that no eviction shall be made if the basis is the failure to pay the rent during the 30-day period of extension. Second, there's a penalty of 2 months imprisonment or fine of not less than 10,000 pesos or both. Okay, if the lessor did not give the concession or to the lessee. So meron siyang penalty. There's an imprisonment. Okay. So these are the concessions granted to the lessees, and I think there's a lot of questions also, um, saying that what are our remedies, no? As a businessman, um, we cannot use our property because of the travel restrictions. Was there no pronouncement for the waiver? Unfortunately, if you read the guidelines, even the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, there is no statement there that there should be a waiver, no? That there should be a waiver of rent. Um, Again, it's only discretionary on the part of the lessor to extend those kinds of reliefs, no? But there is no mandatory statement that the lessor should give a waiver. Okay. Now, let's come to the uh, last part of the lecture um, on rehabilitation of financial distressed enterprises and individuals. Okay. Um, Now, if despite the reliefs granted and despite your efforts, no, um, you still foresee that um, you cannot pay your obligations or dues when they mature. Okay, what are your remedies? No, what are your remedies? And the law provides us with a remedy of rehabilitation. Okay, corporate or individual rehabilitation. So what is rehabilitation? Rehabilitation is the restoration of a debtor to a condition of successful operation and solvency. So you are being restored to a solvent stage, no? When you are profitable. Okay. Uh, the case law defines corporate rehabilitation as an attempt to conserve and administer the asset of an insolvent corporation in the hope of its eventual return from financial distress to solvency. Okay? So the operative word is restoration and reinstatement. And the purpose of rehabilitation is number one, to gain new lease on life. So para buhayin ulit yung company. No? And number two, to allow creditors to be paid. Okay? Because if everybody is collecting and you cannot move anymore, you cannot do business, uh, it's also not good for the creditors because it means that they will not be paid anymore. Okay. Lastly, it provides you a fresh start. Okay. It provides you with a fresh start. So what's the process of rehabilitation? How do rehabilitation proceeds, no? in uh, in the Philippines? Okay, so I would like to liken a rehabilitation process to a sick person, no? A sick person, no. Just like a sick person, financial distress corporation is like a sick, no? Sick business. Okay, not a dead business, but a sick business. Okay. So when you're sick, usually you'll be brought to hospital, okay? And in the hospital, they will evaluate if you're really sick or you're just pretending to be sick, okay? Then after the evaluation, they will decide whether you will go home already or you will be confined to a hospital. If the hospital says that you need more time, you cannot go home yet, okay? Kailangan mo pa magpahinga. So, dito ka muna sa ospital. Confined ka dito. Then, they will assign a doctor kung mag-monitor sa'yo, tutulong sa'yo so that you will be able to recover, okay, on the sickness. Okay. Then, the doctor will give you a prescription. Ano ba yung dapat mong inuming gamot? Ano ba dapat yung gagawin mo para ikaw ay gumaling? No? Then the doctor will also monitor if the prescription are strictly followed. Kailangan sundin. Okay? Then they will guide you until your recovery, no? Until your recovery. So this is how I depict a rehabilitation process. Okay? Just like a sick person. Okay? So in a rehabilitation process, um, an insolvent person, okay, with several creditors na galit na, gusto na makakuha ng bayad. No? Everybody wanted to be paid first. Okay? Um, an insolvent person or corporation can file a petition for rehabilitation in court and help the court and say to the court na can you help me? Maraming nangongolekta sa akin, wala akong pambayad, or may pambayad naman ako but these are intended for business. No? If I pay them all together, wala ka ng perang pang negosyo. Okay. So you will ask the court, can you help me rehabilitate and stop these creditors from collecting first? No? Let me recover and let me first do business. Okay? Hayaan muna nila ako mang negosyo. Babayaran ko sila but I have to restructure my payment. I cannot pay on the original terms because of the economic condition. Okay, like the pandemic, no? Pandemic, um, your usual customers are no longer there. Your usual suppliers are no longer there. So you need some help, no, from legally, okay, in order to stop the unwanted collection of payment. Okay. So if the court found out that, okay, you are really financially distressed, you are insolvent, you have the possibility of being rehabilitated, the court will issue a commencement order. Okay. And in the commencement order, it is coupled with a stay order. The stay order now prohibits any actions and collections on your part. Okay. And these collections and actions in court will be suspended pending the determination of a rehabilitation plan. Okay. So just like a sick person, there will be an appointment of a rehabilitation receiver, no? A receiver that will determine your financial status and help you create a viable rehabilitation plan. Okay, in rehabilitation plan, it will contain the list of the payment terms, no, restructuring of loans, and who will be paid first, no, and who will be paid last. Okay, and what types of loans will be prioritized for payment, or suspended muna yan, i-amortize muna in 2 years time. So it depends, no. So the rehabilitation plan will be recommended by the receiver, and this will be approved by the court. Okay. Now, once approved, this will now be implemented, and hopefully this will help a company and a person recover, okay, from financial distress. So this is the simple illustration of how corporate rehabilitation or individual rehabilitation process is done. Okay. So who is an insolvent person, or who are those entitled to this kind of legal remedy? So an insolvent person, according to the law, refers to the financial condition of the debtor that is generally unable to pay its liabilities or his liabilities as they fall due in the ordinary course of business, or has liabilities that are greater than its or his assets. Okay. So an insolvent person, okay, insolvency does not mean that you don't have money anymore. Okay. It only means that you foresee that if all your obligations mature, you will not be able to pay them simultaneously. Okay, you see the possibility that you will default on those payments, and you foresee that because you are in default, they will proceed with the legal remedy, like they can foreclose the assets, no, that secured those loans. Okay, so you estimate your revenue. You cannot pay them all when they fall due. Okay. And what are the kinds of rehabilitation proceedings? Okay, there are three types. There is a court supervised rehabilitation proceedings. There is also pre-negotiated, so you can already negotiate with your creditors. And there's also out of court informal restructuring agreement for rehabilitation. Okay. What is that commencement order? Remember in the illustration earlier, there's a commencement order mentioned. A commencement order is an order of the court that will direct the BIR. Number one yan, no? Because in the order of payment, gobyerno yung unang babayaran, di ba? So the BIR will be notified. Can you comment on this petition for rehab? Okay. They will appoint a rehabilitation receiver. Then they will prohibit the suppliers to withhold supply of goods and services. So, ibig sabihin, if you're under rehabilitation, hindi pwede yung supplier mo magsabi na, hindi mo na ako magdi-deliver sa'yo kasi wala kang pera, pambayad. Okay, you cannot do that. Okay, because it's a court order, we are helping this company, we're helping this business. You should not stop supplying kasi pag nag-stop ka na mag-supply, mamamatay na yung negosyo. Okay? So it prohibits the supplier to withhold supply of goods and services. It will direct the creditors to file their claims within 5 days before initial hearing. So all the creditors shall be listed. No? Sino ba yung may claim sa company? Then direct the publication in 2 consecutive weeks. Set the case for hearing. Declare that debtor is under rehabilitation. And include a stay order or suspension order. Okay, it's very important is the stay order or suspension order, and this is one of the first thing that a distressed corporation will ask from a court, a stay order. Okay, so what is this stay order or suspension order? This refers to an order by the court which suspend all actions or proceedings in court or otherwise for the enforcement of claims against the debtor. So for example, there is a pending collection case against you, okay, in another court, okay, for another transaction. Once you file a petition for rehabilitation and your petition was found to be sufficient in form and substance, the court will issue a suspension order. Okay, and what will happen to that previous case that was filed against you? Okay, that case will be suspended. Okay, suspended muna yan. Hindi pwedeng dumiretso yung kaso na yan. Suspended. You have to wait until such time that the rehabilitation plan will be approved by the court. Okay, which is a very good relief for a corporation. Just imagine if everybody wanted to sue you. Everybody is filing case against you. So how can you do business? Okay. So the idea is, okay, tigil muna yan, suspended muna lahat. Wala munang pwedeng mangolekta. Okay. Then it suspends all actions to enforce any judgment, attachment, or other provisional remedies against the debtor. So even judgments, no? May judgment na. Final na yung decision. Kukolektahan ka na lang ng amount. Okay? Or attachment or other provisional remedy against you. Stop din po yun. Stop din siya. But it also prohibits the debtor from selling, encumbering, transferring, or disposing in any manner the properties. Okay, so if you are the debtor, okay, what the law would like to avoid is that you will use the corporate rehab case in order for you to dissipate, okay, your property para itakas mo yung property mo para ilabas mo sa company. And or you sell to a bogus person or bogus company. So all sale of property or encumbrance of property will be prohibited, and only those that are allowed by the court will be implemented for sale. It prohibits the debtor also from making payments of its liabilities outstanding as of commencement date, except as provided in the law. What are the other salient effects of commencement order? Okay, it also uh, uh, waives the imposition of all taxes, fees, penalties, interest, charges due to the national government or to the LGU. Okay, in furtherance of the objectives of the rehabilitation. Okay. So suspended muna yung pagbayad ng taxes until such time that the rehabilitation plan is approved by the court. Okay? And the idea again is, say for example, you have a lot of deficiency taxes and the government wanted to collect from you. The idea is, uh, because you are being rehabilitated, gusto ng batas na magkaroon ka ng opportunity, no, na magnegosyo. So one of those is the waiver of imposition of taxes, fees, and penalties. Second is that assuming there is conveyance of property. For example, you file a petition for rehab, then or even before the filing of petition for rehab, you already sold your properties, no? This will be nullified or considered void because these are in fraud of the creditors. Okay, so i-rescind yan or shall be considered null and void. Assuming that, okay, after the proceedings in the court, the court said that you have no chance of being rehabilitated, what will happen? Okay, the court may convert the proceedings into liquidation proceedings or the winding up. No, isasara ka na lang. Sasara na lang yung kumpanya. So if you are not rehabilitated, you will be liquidated. Okay. So liquidation happens when a debtor is insolvent and there is no financial likelihood for the debtor to be successfully rehabilitated. The effects of liquidation order will be the dissolution of the corporation. The legal title of the asset shall be vested to the liquidator. Okay. And all contracts shall be considered terminated or breached. Okay. And there shall be no separate collection of unsecured claim allowed. No foreclosure proceedings for a period of 180 days. Okay. So the idea is, if there's a liquidation, what will happen is the court will list all the creditors, kung sino po yung mangongolekta sa inyo, no? And there is priority of payment, no? Uunahin muna, of course, the government, gobyerno muna. Okay. Then susunod diyan yung mga secured obligations, meaning may mga collateral, no? Collateral obligations. Panghuli yung mga unsecured obligations. Okay. So those are the preferential who will be paid first. So maybe we can, in order to understand the corporate rehab, maybe we can discuss some of the famous cases. No? BPI versus Sarabia Manor Hotel Corporation. Sarabia Manor is a hotel operation in Iloilo City. No? Nice hotel. No? Then they started to obtain a loan from Far East Bank, which was later absorbed by BPI. The loan is intended in order to build an expansion project at that time, no? 1997. Now, Sarabia paid initially the interest on the loan, but because of the delayed in completion of the new building, Sarabia encountered various cash flow problems. And also at that time, 2001, there was a terrorist attack, the World Trade Center. And then there was issue of Abu Sayyaf in Mindanao. So they were not able to get enough cash flow to pay for the loan. Okay? And because they foresee the impossibility of paying them on time, Sarabia filed a petition for rehab with prayer for issuance of a stay order. Okay. In the proposed rehab plan, Sarabia asked for the restructuring of the outstanding loan because um, the payment on that loan was based on their initial projection that they can pay those loan obligation. Now, the regional trial court said that it is sufficient in form of substance, and they issued a stay order. So bawal muna mangolekta. Then they appointed a receiver. So the receiver found that Sarabia may be rehabilitated, and that they recommended that the court shall fix the interest rate to 6.5% per annum, which was opposed, of course, by BPI. Sabi niya, dapat 10% yan. And there's also an argument na Sarabia is not really qualified for rehabilitation. Okay? So the RTC approved, however, the rehabilitation plan, and then according to the court, uh, Sarabia has financial history that they can really pay, except that there is an external event that happened, that enables the company to pay for the loan. Now, the Court of Appeals approved and affirmed the decision of the RTC, okay? And the Supreme Court ruled also in favor of Sarabia. Ang sabi ng Supreme Court, um, a thorough examination of analysis of the distressed corporation's data shows that Sarabia has the financial feasibility to recover. So sabi ng Supreme Court dito, if there's a real opportunity to rehabilitate, if there is a chance to rehabilitate a corporation, okay, then that corporation may be rehabilitated, and the petition for rehab should be granted. Okay. Second, if there is no reasonable probability to revive, meaning when you file the petition for rehab, there's really no opportunity for the revival or restoration. The court said that rehabilitation is not feasible, therefore, you should proceed already with the liquidation stage. Now, so that's the case of BPI versus Sarabia Manor. So sabi doon, kailangan when you file a petition for corporate rehab, there is really a chance for revival of business. And it should not be a fraudulent petition just to evade the payment of loans. Now came the case of BPI Family Savings Bank this time versus St. Michael Medical Center Inc. In this case, okay, spouses Rudil, who are from Cavite, owns the St. Michael Hospital, okay, under sole proprietorship. Okay. Now, because the hospital business was expanding, they bought a parcel of land beside the St. Michael Hospital, and then they incorporated another company, the St. Michael Medical Center Inc. Okay? And the idea is this company will be the vehicle in order to build a bigger hospital, a bigger one, okay? An 11-story hospital, tertiary level. Okay? So in order to finance the construction, okay, they also obtained a loan from BPI Family Savings Bank for 35 million. Okay? So they contributed their own money, but they also asked somebody help from BPI Family Savings Bank. Okay? However, there is also a problem with the construction. No? May problema na naman sa construction. Just like sa case ng Sarabia Manor. May delay din sa construction. So the projected revenue, okay, so imbis na 11-story hospital, ang natapos lang ay 2-story hospital lang. So they were not able to project that they were not able to recover the projected revenue, no, that they were expecting. And because of that, they are paying BPI Family Savings Bank from their own pocket, not from the revenue of St. Michael Medical Center. So, nag-abono sila ngayon. Sila yung nagbabayad because St. Michael Medical Center is not yet earning, no? Wala pang kita siya. Hindi pa nila na-transfer yung operation from St. Michael Hospital to SMMCI kasi two-story building pa lang yung tatayo. Okay. So, when there was delay in the payment, BPI Family Savings Bank now require them to pay the full amount of the loan. And because they failed to pay, they proceed for the foreclosure of the property that secured that loan. Okay? Kasi sinangla nila yung lupa, no, na tinatayuan ng hospital. So because of that, St. Michael Medical Center, just like Sarabia Manor, sabi nila, okay, I cannot pay this obligation. So mag-file na lang ako ng petition for rehab. Okay, parang Sarabia Manor din kasi I have no revenue to pay for the loan because they foresee the impossibility of meeting the obligation. Now, the regional trial court issued a stay order, appointed a receiver, and approved a rehabilitation plan. Okay. Then the Court of Appeals affirmed the decision of the RTC and said that St. Michael, based on the records, is qualified for rehabilitation, and the rehabilitation plan is based on financial documents. And they also said that there are some investment commitments, no? While it is not earning yet, but it has investment commitments from the investors, no? Nag-sign na sila ng mga kontrata for the investment commitment. However, the Supreme Court said that for a corporate rehabilitation case to proceed, it assumes that the corporation is already operational. Okay. Second, restoration is the central idea behind corporate rehabilitation. Meaning, restore means to bring back or to put back into a former or original state. So meaning, if there's no, if there's nothing to restore, you're not qualified for petition for rehabilitation. According to the court, SMMCI has not formally operated nor earned any income, and there exists no viable business concern to be restored. So there is lack of material financial commitment to support the rehabilitation. And it also said that the signing of investment agreement is not a basis that there is a fund for the rehabilitation. There must be a commitment from the investors that they are ready and willing to invest. Okay. Okay. So that ends the presentation. Thank you so much. I hope you have learned from our lecture this afternoon.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll go through some questions that we have. So may mga pahabol tayo on the BIR piece, Attorney J. One is, can the BIR reinvestigate a taxpayer who has already paid the delinquent taxes with the order of payment signed by the RDO?
Wait. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. If there is already a payment by if there's already a settlement, no? If I don't know how the settlement happened, no? But remember that assuming that it is based on an assessment and it was paid in the RDO level, I'm not sure at what stage was the payment done. Okay? For example, if there is a preliminary assessment notice, and based on the preliminary assessment notice, you paid all the taxes, di ba? You pay all the taxes. Okay? The question is, um, will that payment already relieve you from being reinvestigated? And the answer is no, because um, that assessment has to go through the review process in the regional level. Okay, so to answer that question, it's possible that a taxpayer who has already paid, no, it's possible that the taxpayer may be reinvestigated.
All right. I guess there's some basis like if there are new findings that was not previously brought to light during this investigation, something like that. Okay, so there's a question here. For example, there's a government agency like SBMA that collected rent even throughout the lockdown period and the pandemic. So at that time, all the hotels in the SBMA area were not allowed to open, but they continued to pay rent. So what is the remedy there? In the light of, let's say, the Bayanihan Hilas 1 Act?
Yeah, based on the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act and also the DTI regulation, the only remedy is really to ask for the deferment. No, you have two concessions. Remember, you have two reliefs. Number one, you can ask for a delay in the payment, a grace period of 30 days, or you can ask for what we call as concession for the amortization of the rent for 6 months. No, so because but with respect to waiver, that that question is there is no clear cut. Yeah, there's no clear cut ruling, or there's no clear cut guidelines that's saying that there should be waiver. Now, if you ask me, assuming you want to argue on that point, no, what could be a possible legal basis to ask for a waiver? Um, well, under the law, under the law on contract, you have to check also your contract, that if you are being prohibited from using the property on certain period of time, uh, that the rental fees may be waived. No, you have to check your contract if there is such a provision.
Okay, and then some questions on the Bayanihan Hill as 1 Act again. So when is the 30 days grace period counted from? Is it from the end of the ECQ, or because we've had different kinds of quarantine? When is it counted from?
Based on the guidelines, it should be counted from the ECQ period.
Okay. And then can you comment on some eviction for non-payment of rent, on the provisions there in that law?
Again, if there is a uh, if you are granted a 30-day period, and if the basis for the eviction is because of your non-payment despite the 30-day grace period, then that will hold the lesser liable. Again, there are two penalties there. There's an imprisonment um, clause, and there's also a payment of a fine. However, uh, if that is already beyond the grace period, okay, then uh, the lessor will not be liable for that. So kailangan po tingnan natin, no, kung ano ba, if that in the 30-day period or not.
Okay. And then finally, what are the DST exemptions? So we know that there are, stays of bank loans and restructuring, and there's a lot of articles on the DST exemption of those loans. Could you comment on that? So are all the DST on these loans and the subsequent restructuring exempt?
Yes, actually under the Bayanihan law, there is a provision there that any restructuring, okay, of the loans of the banks and quasi banks, no, coverage are not only banks but quasi banks, and also even pawn shops, no, pawn shops that are administered by the BSP, um, that the DST on that restructuring of loans should be exempted from DST.
Then what remedy can so if you have any data on the second law Bayanihan Hill as one Act 2, so is there a remedy where for a borrower that can be availed of in terms of securing loans and financial grants and like minimal interest or something like that?
Um, Actually, they're discussing about the reliefs by the DTI, no, granted to the MSME, no, but we have no data yet. No, I have no data yet on does that proceed for the meantime. But I guess now I guess now the common concern is actually on the legal side. The common argument will be, would you consider the pandemic as a fortuitous event or a force majeure? No, it's an argument that you can also uh, uh, advance that it's possible that okay, assuming that there's no guidelines, there's no particular clear cut pronouncement. Now, what would be your basis, no, to ask for some relief or to ask for a waiver? And you can check your contracts, and if you see a provision on fortuitous event or force majeure, um, you can argue that the pandemic is considered a force majeure. And if you see the definition of a force majeure, it only says that it is an event that is not foreseeable, or if it is foreseeable, it is not
Mm,
avoidable,
not
cannot be avoided,
cannot be
and
avoided.
it cannot be. I mean, it's beyond your control. No? So these are the fortuitous event, and it says that if there's fortuitous event, it should exempt you from any liability because of that intervening event.
Yeah, it
So
will
just to
it
give
will
you,
be interesting to see how cases maybe will be decided like two
yep,
years from
yep,
today. I'm sure a lot of lawyers are thinking up of these matters.
really.
So, one short one, is real estate tax included in the VATP?
Real estate tax. This is the tax on the real properties.
Yep.
It's not covered because remember the real estate tax is levied by the local government. No, the VAPP only covers the national internal revenue taxes. No, collected by the
Or
BI.
or from the BIR, yes. So, one short question on corporate matters. Can the corporate secretary be charged with perjury if, he's the signatory, if the GIS specifies actual annual membership meeting or stockholders meeting, but there is really none conducted?
Uh,
So, yep.
um, it's possible, and remember, if you're a corporate secretary, now I'm also a corporate secretary to several corporations. If you look at the new form on the signature page of the corporate secretary, there's a statement, no, that statement that you verify that all the directors and stockholders therein are has consented to the filing of the GIS, and that you verify
Mhm.
that all informations are true and correct. So actually that's yung ano na yon, yung statement that the directors should have consented. No? You have to
Okay.
check on that portion.
So it's possible that the previous practice of just signing 30 days from the bylaws will be considered as perjury. It's possible,
Yes.
depending, I guess, on who will want to file that case. On corporate rehabilitation, what are the costs involved in filing for rehab? will pay for that? Is it the borrower, the bank, or the supplier?
It shall be considered as a administrative expense of the company.
Okay.
So in fact, even the compensation of the rehabilitation receiver, no, it will have to be approved by the court.
Yeah, and then like a consultant fee, like
Yep,
that's a
yep.
consultant's expense. So we have, thank you for everyone's patience. We have last two questions, I think, and so this is regarding when you file for bankruptcy and business reverses, right? So one question is, if you file for bankruptcy, is there a need for you to pay separation pay to your employee? And what is the computation? How many days notice? On the other side, the other question is that from a labor perspective, is it considered constructive illegal dismissal if because I think there are some articles that say that an employer cannot have an employee on floating or permanent temporary layoff situation for 6 months. Then after that, if the employee is not allowed to go back to work, then the employer will have to pay separation or retrenchment costs. So can you comment on that? And that's the last question, I think.
Yep. On the labor side, no, um, uh, as you said, no, as you said, ma'am, earlier, uh, an employer can put the employee on floating status for a period of 6 months. However, after the 6 month period, and you still did not bring the employee back to work, it's considered constructive dismissal. So meaning, that's why before that period, you can either already serve a notice to the employee that the employee is being retrenched. Meaning, for example, if you're because of your if your operation is cut already, wala ka ng negosyo, and so you don't need the drivers anymore, you don't need the sales lady anymore. So what is your remedy? No, so you can already notify the employee for the retrenchment, but there's a procedure there. Na you have to notify also the DOLE, the Department of Labor and Employment, that you are undertaking a retrenchment, and you have to justify bakit ka nagre-retrench. Baka naman may operation ka talaga and you're just singling out some employees, no? So there must be some justification, uh, and there should be notification, of course, sa DOLE, no? Hindi siya dapat na sa employee lang i-inform natin. So you have to inform the Department of Labor and Employment that you are going to do a retrenchment. Now, if for example, ito po ay retrenchment to prevent losses. Ito po yung sinasabing retrenchment to prevent losses. Yan po yung ground for the termination. Retrenchment to prevent losses. When you say retrenchment, the service of that employee is no longer needed by the company. Kasi kukonti na yung empleyado mo at dodoble na po yung empleyado nyo na papasok.
Okay. So with the DOLE, there's a list that you have to comply with. There are documentary requirements that you have to support. They will conduct an investigation. And then so in insolvency or bankruptcy, it's the same way. So it's not only with the SEC, it's with your creditors as well. So how about that process? Of course, there's a computation on so the tip there is not to let it reach 6 months, right? So maybe on the fourth month and you foresee that you will not renew your business into the same scale as before, then you can serve that notice. So that's how it is. Okay, so I think we're a bit over time, but it was a very meaty and juicy presentation with case studies as well. So we have now reached the end of today's very interesting webinar. If you have further questions, please go through the YouTube video and you will see Attorney Jay's contact details there. You can definitely reach out to him directly through his email, and the law firm will provide you with you know uh, advice as you need it. So we will now call on our Vice President Gerald Chan for the virtual appreciation ceremonies and then the closing remarks.
Yeah, good afternoon. May I request everyone to stay and to witness the virtual presentation of the plaque of appreciation. It's an honor to present this plaque of appreciation to Attorney Jay Masangkay, tax and legal consultant, in grateful recognition and profound gratitude during your invaluable insights, sharing your invaluable insight as a resource speaker. And in sincere appreciation of your outstanding service to the community through public forums and webinars, particularly in the Filipino-Chinese community and for the entire society in general. The Chinese Filipino Business Club, Inc. is truly inspired and humbled by your noble deeds. You are being honored with much appreciation and gratitude. Given this 12th day of September 2020 on the occasion of the CFBCI webinar series on legal and tax updates, signed Alejandro Ko, President, Chinese Filipino Business Club Incorporated. So again, on behalf of the CFBCI, we would like to thank our resource speaker, Attorney Jay Masangkay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Then another plaque of appreciation, again, will be presented to Attorney Maria Luz Victoria Ballesteros in grateful recognition and profound gratitude for your contribution in efficiently piloting CFBCI webinars, and in sincere appreciation of your outstanding service to the community through public forums and webinars, particularly in the Chinese Filipino business community and the society in general. The Chinese Filipino Business Club, Inc. is truly inspired and humbled by your noble deeds. You are being honored with much appreciation and gratitude. Given on this 12th day of September 2020, on the occasion of CFBCI webinar series on how, on the legal and tax update, and previously on how to protect individual personal information or data privacy. Signed by Alejandro Ko, President, Chinese Filipino Business Club. Thank you.
Thank you very
Again,
much.
Again, on behalf of the CFBCI, thank you to our moderator, Attorney Vicky, and to our resource speaker, Attorney Jay, to all our participants who attended today's webinar, making it is one of our successful CFBCI series. Again, God bless everyone and wish you all good health. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Have
Thank
a
you,
nice
everyone.
day.
Attorney Vicky, maraming salamat.
Unmute. The host will let you unmute. Unmute na.
Nama, patay.
Up, quiet. Thank you so much for the webinar. I learned a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ay, tapos na sweatshirt, ano pa, Monday pa kinaking chapdi. Last Monday pa. Oh. Hindi siya ka-off.
How do I close it? I close it pero ako likhai le kong ya. Oh. Sino yan?